Dr. Cuddy is on line 2, and we're going to go to Dr. Dennis Cuddy.
As you say, we are being manipulated. It's all planned, and it's going according to the script. What I had done last week was a series, the first part called the Power Elite's Historical Outline, and we were into part 1, and I'm just going to go on and pick up with that because it fits with the Supreme Court's decision, this whole positivist notion, which is it comes from, and I'll spend some more time later on this, maybe in part 3 after we get through part 2. But there was, let me put it this way, parts 1 and 2 of my series will be the historical and economic and political aspect of the Power Elite's strategy and their outline. And then there's going to be a part 3 which has to do with the values. But because of your discussion with your callers there about Obama, the positivist notion, and they always put a positive word. It's sort of like Philip Furneaux, I mentioned in the last program in 1792 in his article in American Museum, that publication about this hereditary elite going to try to retake control of this young upstart American republic. Furneaux was one of the lesser-known founding fathers, and he knew, he's very wise, what they were up to. And the revolution wasn't just a political or economic one, but they were also going to change the values, because that's important. And I mentioned last week about the Rockefellers and the Rockefeller Brothers Fund is part of the new hereditary elite. It used to be the hereditary elite would be kings, you know, Louis XIV, Louis XV, all that, George I, II, III, and so on. But then you had hereditary elite branching off into families like the Rockefellers, and how the Rockefeller Brothers Fund said this new world order, this is in 1959, how this new world order had fallen to them to create it in the future. And the first part of it was spiritual. It wasn't economic or political, but spiritual. And so they consider values to be very important. So I'm going to spend the whole part of this Power Elite's Historical Outline series on values, but because of your conversation with your callers, I'll jump ahead just briefly. And what happened was, coming out of the French Revolution, the change in values was they had liberté, égalité, fraternité, which sounds very similar to our liberty and equality and so on, but it was different. And Saint-Simon was one of the names of the revolutionists, and his secretary's name was Auguste Comte, C-O-M-T-E. And Comte is the one who developed the terms and concepts of sociology and basically socialism and so forth. But in terms of values, he was the one who sort of implemented this value orientation, or the reshaping of the values. In the 1850s, he had a system of positive polity, P-O-L-I-T-Y. And then a little bit later, 10, 15, 20 years later, that had filtered into the court system. Long story short, the law schools in this country and elsewhere started teaching this positivist philosophy, which was man-centered. That's what Comte was about.
Hold that thought, Dennis. We'll be right back here. Well, this is Dr. Stan. Of course, our guest is Dr. Dennis Cuddy, and if you'd like to get his material, you can read it at newswithviews.com. News is what we talk about here will come out of the articles that is there at newswithviews.com. And of course, Dr. Cuddy is now beginning to go into, where did all these ideas of socialism, where did all these ideas of changing the values of society to take us away from suddenly a society built upon, a culture built upon biblical views, to atheistic views, and so do whatever you want is perfectly all right. There is no right, there is no wrong. And so these ideas of socialism, the ideas of certainly moral relativity go together. And of course, we're tasting this all the way back to a man named Auguste Comte. So pick up the story there, and we're talking about in the years following the French Revolution. Go right ahead.
Right, and Comte was the executor of this philosophy coming out of the Illuminati and the French Revolution. And like I said, I'm going to go into this in more depth in the future, but I'm just going to real quick here. So Comte developed this man-centered philosophy, and the court and the legal profession were the first really to formally, F-O-R-M-A-L, formally pick this up. And basically, as you just said, there's no right or wrong. It's relative, and because it's relative values, then the truth or rightness or wrongness can mean whatever I say it means. And so in the early 20th century, you had justices like Oliver Wendell Holmes and Felix Frankfurter adopting this and saying the Constitution means whatever I say it means. And so now they dress it up a little bit, and it's an evolving document. They give all kinds of rationalizations to what they're doing, but basically that's what it is. You can ignore the Constitution and say, well, yeah, I know it says that, but then there's a clause that really, in terms of, let's say, abortion, there's a penumbra. That's what Blackmun said, who wrote the Roe versus Wade decision in 1972. There's this penumbra, which means sort of an aura. It's not there. There's nothing specifically in the Constitution which allows abortion. However, there's this aura around some clause that allows me to interpret it as including the right to whatever. And in this case, Obamacare. And it's a clever way of saying, I am rewriting the Constitution, which basically was what Justice Roberts just did, although he's supposed to be a conservative, right? He's now joined, at least for this decision, the ranks of the leftists, and he's saying, well, it means whatever I say it means.
But I think what people have to understand, this is all staged matters.
Right.
It's staged matters for us common people. So we think that, oh, my goodness, we almost got it through. It's just 4 to 5, and we could swing one person on the Supreme Court. Ladies and gentlemen, if anybody in that Supreme Court didn't vote the way they were supposed to, they would send them on a trip to Dallas and do to them exactly what they did to John Fitzgerald Kennedy, to Bobby Kennedy, to Martin Luther King, and these people know it. I mean, they're certainly in positions to know that the people who are running America think nothing at all of routine assassinations, of sending 58,000 American boys to fight and die in a no-win war in Vietnam, while we financed the North Vietnamese all that time because they couldn't have kept the war going without constant infusions of technology and weapons coming directly or indirectly from the United States, just like the Nazis never could have kept the war going if it hadn't been for the 100 American corporations suddenly building their weapons and the major American and British banks financing the Nazi movement. Nothing as it appears to be. Go ahead, Dr. Cuddy.
About the Nazis, it's not just to build up the Wehrmacht, the war machine, but to maintain it, which was really important. I remember his name was Baron, I think, from ITT. The Nazis were having a little trouble over there, so he flies over to Switzerland and then, helps them out, makes their accuracy on their weapon systems a little better so they can kill our boys. So, not only beginning Hitler's machine, but maintaining it. Got to maintain the old machine if we're going to keep the war going. So anyway, in terms of today and the various justices, sometimes what they do is there's sort of a strategy where, and it not only applies to the Supreme Court, but Congress as well. What you'll do is you'll have individuals, let's say, in the House, who are under political pressure. They will alternate. They will vote against something because they know when it gets to the Senate, it'll be, knocked down anyway. I'm sorry, they'll vote for it because they know in the Senate it'll be knocked down, or vice versa. So they play this game. So in the past, it was Kennedy. See, Kennedy was the swing vote in the Supreme Court. Well, maybe Kennedy got tired. He had his picture on the cover of Time. So he said, hey, let somebody else take this one. And so, lo and behold, Kennedy now is joining the others, but now it's Roberts, who does the switch. The bottom line, like you say, is it's 5-4, as it was planned to be, whoever it was to vote. Okay, so whether it's Congress and, somebody saying back in their district, I voted for that measure, and everybody applauds him, but the only reason he voted for it is because he knew when it got to the Senate it would be defeated anyway, so it's going anyway. And Obama plays this game. He plays the game, and the Supreme Court plays the game. They're all, playing this game.